Greetings and salutations. Okay, was it just me, or did that sound off? Like slowed down a little bit, like the sound was slowed down a little bit. I don't know what it was. It was clearly the same song. It just sounded different. Maybe it's just me, but I was just listening to it like that's not right at all. Anyway, let us go through and talk and say howdy to everyone who's currently in chat. We've got our good friend Nathan. We've got Susan Robertson, Gene Hudson. Titan has decided to grace us with his presence. And we've definitely got, we'll let everyone hop on in. Give us a little bit more time to log in. And of course, okay, thank you, Gene and Titan both agree. Like, yeah, it was slower. Like the song was, it's like someone had slowed it down like just a little bit, not a lot, but just enough that you could tell. It was weird. Anyway, again, oh, hey, Tom Paul. Love you too, man. Appreciate you. Again, you can always watch in replay. And again, if you're watching this on replay, we love and appreciate you too. I don't publicize this channel. You've all found it, honestly. And I like the idea of it staying small so we can know each other, pray for each other. So again, if you're watching this on replay versus live, you're just as much a part of this group. So, MH1953 is here. Hello. Actually just had an interesting conversation. I don't know how much of nothing professional, but a good friend of mine, I'll say it that way, his daughter, I'll leave out some of the drama at her current school, but we'll actually schools and stuff, we're going to talk about that here in a second as well, just some of the insanity that's out there. But she's graduating early, like early, and they're trying to get her into college where she's going to, she's going to either being a physicist or a medical physicist. And I could not be prouder of her, even though she's not my kid. But yeah, I mean, happy for, I couldn't be happier. It's absolutely ecstatic. And of course, he's got a lot of stuff to do to get her into college. Like I said, this is all happening way early. Like next semester or next year is supposed to be her senior. That's when her senior year is, and she just, it's like, nope, I'm graduating, and she's even graduating before her graduating class. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, couldn't be prouder. Image 1953. Awesome. Let me put that up there. So Image 1953, her granddaughter was born this afternoon at 3:48. And for those listening, mother and baby are both fine. Wonderful. Now, of course, this is one of those typical difference between male and female questions, situations, because I'm like, granddaughter, happy, health, wonderful. I'm done. And of course, all the women in the chat, I can already feel are like, how big, what's her name, how much she weigh, they want all the, how much hair did she have, what color is her hair, all the dudes are like, cool, wonderful, we've got all the information we need. There's a new human, we know it's a daughter, everyone's happy and healthy, we're cool. And Gene mentions that Sharon Guy's mom was in the hospital, but she's going to go home tomorrow. So that's good. Obviously, we'll keep her in prayer. Okay, Gene, it's not a mother thing. It's a woman thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Women who are not mothers yet, they ask the same question. They look at you like, why don't you have all of this information? And you're like, I don't know. See? Okay, here it is. MH1953 has answered the most pressing questions that the lovely ladies have to ask, which is, her name is Nora. She's 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Excellent. Oh, Gene's like, it's a mother thing. It's a woman thing. No. I've known too many teenage girls in my life. My daughter's a teenage girl. Her friends, they all ask the same questions. This is a girl thing. No. You can't pin this on motherhood. There's lots of things you can pin on motherhood. Trust me. I've seen it. That ain't one of them. Anyway, it's a day of good news. I like that. You know what? It's pretty what we're going to talk about. This is good news. I love it. Okay. I'll save it for when we begin. We'll actually start a little bit earlier today. I won't delay anything too long because I do want to have this conversation. I think there's some interesting elements, and I've been wrestling with something in my head for a little bit, and I kind of I want us all to wrestle with it, right, together, because that's what a lot of this is going to be about. We got to wrestle with these questions. Oh, she's very alert. Good. Yeah, that's also the next thing. Is she alert? Was she sluggish? Yeah, those are all. Yeah, everyone's fine. Everyone's healthy. Wonderful. And Nora, I like Nora. Oh wait, I think that's actually that's actually that's excess. That's it's one of the Flash's future children. That's what it is. She takes on the excess mantle. Yeah, her name's Nora too. Love it. Anyway, yes, Susan, misery does love company. Nora Elizabeth, even better. I like that. Nora Elizabeth. All right, let's. Yeah, congratulations. We're glad Sharon Guy's mother is out of the hospital, and we're glad for your new granddaughter. It's a good day. It's a good day. Let's say a quick prayer, and then let's get into this conversation a little bit, because I'm wrestling with some stuff here, people, and but in a positive way. So trying to figure things out, and then I have a confession. I'll start off with a confession, and then we'll move into it. But definitely we need some prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for all that you've done. Father, thank you. Let us first say thank you for Nora Elizabeth, that mother and daughter are happy, that they're healthy, that everything went well. We thank you for this new life. This is a good and happy day, Father. We're glad that Sharon Guy's mother is coming home, is out of the hospital. We know that she will still need prayer, but we know that you are there with her, and we thank you for these good things that have happened today. These are good things. It's easy for us to look at the bad and to focus on the bad and not to realize how much good there is. That we were sent here, we were created to do good in your name, to bring life into the world, to heal wounds, to bring society and order and love, not chaos and anger and hate. Thank you for reminding us that we should focus on that which is good and glorious and beautiful, and we should want to create and not destroy, or focus on that which is evil and dark. Father, give us wisdom as we speak tonight. Help us to seek after your will and your ways. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. We got a new granddaughter in the world. People are leaving hospitals. Kids are graduating, going on to college to do important work. It's a good day. It's a good day. We should never lose sight of that. So let me do the confession first. I'm flaky. I can be flaky and wishy-washy on things. Try to sit down, do things, and I'm easily distracted. But like the comic strip, I'm still working on the comic strip. We're doing something new with it, so it's going to go on a bit of a hiatus. No one's bought the Substack anyway, so I got a little room to work with. We're going to put it on TikTok. It's going to be awesome. But at the same time, in the back of my head as I'm doing it, I'm like, is this really what I should be doing, or is there something else I should be doing? Because I'm doing it to try and get out of my day job. And it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't be focusing doing this to get out of my day job. I was working on another comic strip, or a comic book about Jesus, but then I was kind of reading through some things, and some people were like, and I do think I haven't watched it, so I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. It's but like The Chosen, right? The show about Jesus, and people said, well, they're changing, or they're putting words in Jesus's mouth, and that's blasphemous. I've been wondering about that, so One of the comics I was working on, I've sort of put it to the side because I'm like, it would be an exploration of Jesus's life, but focusing on the trials in the desert. I'm like, well, if it is blasphemous to do that, then maybe that would be a problem. So I've sort of shelved that, but I'm still thinking on ways to work through it, work through the concept of what I'm trying to do on that. But I feel like it's easy to get. I have to confess that I'm wishy-washy on some of these things, and I'm easily distracted because it's hard to stay focused on one thing. And so it's hard to try and get all these things in a row. And I always feel like I take on too much, and I do. Like, it's not even a question. So I want to make certain that I'm taking on the right things, and this is sort of what's spinning me into this thought. Because what if, and this has been in my head for a little bit, it's like, what if it's not the right thing? What if it's merely about making the choice and making that choice right by seeing it through, by making it happen? We see, it's like throughout history, we see people who just power through and they make these things happen. And we always say, it's the right person, right time. And that's all true. God's blessing, also true. But what if we actually have a more what if we as imagers of Scripture, of imagers of God, more precisely said, what if we have way more power in this than we realize? This is why it's like, well, I was thinking about, it's like, because my big thing is I want to know that I'm doing the right thing, and then I'll just do that. That's what I'm trying to figure out, right? But this is this thought. It's like, but what if it's not about doing the right thing per se, and rather making a decision and moving through with it to completion? Maybe that's the better way to think of it, because maybe the right thing is less about finding the thing that God specifically wants you to do. And he's like, I want you to fulfill your goal or your destiny your way. Like, he wants us to be active participants in our lives with him. What if it's less about us trying to figure out the thing that God has set up for us to do per se, and it's us living up to our potential? And that maybe we have a lot more power, a lot more control than we realize. And by control, I don't mean that God is just hands off willy-nilly, but rather that it's also, again, the question of predestination versus foreknowledge. And I'm like, it's a null point question because God's outside of time. It's both in all of the above for him. So he wants us to engage. He wants us to engage with him. He wants us to do it. What if we have a lot more control over our lives than we realize? What if there's blessings and things we could accomplish if we just became an active participant in his creation? Again, seek the kingdom of God first, and all these things will be added unto you. So what if we seek the kingdom first, and when God gives us a job to do, we just actually pursue it completely? What if we stop focusing on the bad things and focus on the good things? Focus on creation. What would it mean to really to live that Christian life? And I know this is a question everyone asks, and has asked for since Jesus ascended. So I'm not asking any question anyone else hasn't ever asked, but I'm trying to look at it I think I'm trying to look at this from a different perspective. Because what if we are seeing the separation of the wheat and the tares today, right? And I think we are. I mean, I don't mean in a general sense. I mean, I think the separation of the wheat and the tares Jesus talked about for the end times, that's what we're seeing right now. I think we're starting to see that, right? Yes, exactly, Titan. In a man's heart, he determines his course, but the Lord directs his step. Like, we can't account, the Lord will put us where we need to be. He will guide us. But that also, but at the same time, we have an active participation. God steps in when he wants to step in, when he wants to push us in a different direction. But what if we have a lot more power in how that plays out? There's this argument I read about in rabbinic, that rabbis argue over, which is, since Bathsheba's son was Solomon, right? And Solomon was whom God chose to build his temple. The question becomes, then should David then how could he have possibly sinned, right? If God uses, if David hadn't married Bathsheba and had Solomon, then who would have built the temple, right? It's like God ordained Solomon to be born. We know this. So the argument is, then did God cause David's sin? And one of the things, and of course we know that's not the case. God does not cause sin. In a lot of rabbinic, and I was reading this, a lot of rabbinical experts and scholars have come to the conclusion that yes, David was always supposed to marry Bathsheba. Even taking it further, that Uriah the Hittite was always going to die in that war. The problem was David's sinful behaviors created this tragedy when it could have been a blessing. That it's like, yes, God was always going to she was always going to be his wife. Solomon was always going to be born, but David did it the wrong way, and he didn't know what he was doing per se. That he was marrying this woman. That rather, is that the blessings that were supposed to come out of it were no longer his, as far as everything that later happens to David. Like, we know how bad things get for David after all that occurs. And it's like, if David had not sinned, if he had gone to war like he was supposed to, that's a very big point in that story. We can talk about it someday. But it's like, if he hadn't sinned, if he had been doing the right things, Uriah would have died an honorable death, right? And again, not that Uriah was dishonored, but rather it would have been just an honorable death. There, and David would have taken Bathsheba. Everything would have been fine and kosher, and all the problems that happened later wouldn't have occurred. And it's sort of like the negative version of what I'm talking about. But it's like, but what if we do the same thing? If we live in God's will, we pursue the right things. Because again, things are going to happen we can't predict. That's God. But we have responsibility to make decisions. What if instead of looking at all the bad things, we focus more on creation? We focus more on being imagers of Christ. We actually actively eschew the evil of this world. What does that actually look like? And of course, this is one of those things where everyone's like, well, do we want to become Torah observant? I don't think we're not supposed to. We're Gentiles. The early church answered this question. The apostles answered this question. But that being said, it also, we see Paul talking about we should focus on that which is good and lovely and true. Okay. Then where do we draw the line on those things that aren't? How should we draw those lines? And then how do we engage the world around us? Because we can't go off and become monks. We don't see the early church doing that. This sort of ascetic lifestyle where it's like we're just going to divorce ourselves from all contact with humanity. We can't do that. We're not supposed to do that. But we are supposed to be different. How does the Christian church today, what is the next step? What is the step we need to do to engage with God, create the kingdom on earth that he asks us to bring to the world around us? How do we be so radically different that it's undeniable, right? How are we supposed to do that? And this is sort of the question I have, because I don't think it's disconnected. Or let me rephrase, I don't think it's disconnected from the question of the supernatural, right? One of the question, again, the question I was asked a couple months ago now on on one of these other shows, I thought was very insightful, was how is it that in the ancient world, the supernatural was so active that it was undeniable, but then by the time we get to a couple hundred years ago, it's so little, it's so reduced, it can be argued not to happen, not to exist at all. And the only conclusion I could come to is it's Christ. We brought the kingdom. We actually we were taking down these walls. We were taking down these strongholds. We were pushing the evil supernatural at bay. And I think that's true. I don't think we did it enough to her point where it's like it could be argued not to have existed. I think it did exist. I think a lot of people saw it, but it was definitely less pronounced. It had way less effect on the world than it did prior. Okay, so we agree. So what does that form of Christianity look like in the modern world? What kind of things do we need to pray about? How do we pray for them? How do we come against them? How do we really break these chains? And I know it's well, you got the moms of miracles, and trust me, we'll be talking. But I think the type of deliverance that they practice, I think, is very different from what I'm talking about. It really is, because these aren't demons that we're talking about. We're talking about Shadim, and you could even argue maybe even Elohim. Kind of not, again, Elohim is plural, meaning divine beings, not God himself, right? These sort of divine beings that have authority. It's like, how do we throw them down? How do we oppose them? How do we create, how do we live this out? So that's the question I have. And I want to engage that with y'all. And again, in the near future, in a few weeks from now, we'll be tonight's shows, the shows on Thursdays, we're going to push it to 9, but it's going to be sirupapers, right? So we'll definitely be engaging on the Sunday shows on this. But I want everyone to think about this. This is not a today only kind of a question. I want this to be the new theme moving forward. And as I have revelations, as I'm going to bring them to y'all. I want y'all to respond. Howdy, Davey. So okay, great point. Titan said, one of the greatest supernatural miracles today is conversion. I completely agree. And I'm right there with you. He says the changing of one's character to reflect Christ. I couldn't be more with you. In fact, after I graduated college, I wanted, before I got married, I wanted to drive out into the desert. And I went out to West Texas, randomly found, literally it was entirely random. I just drove. I just want to drive until I find the place I'm supposed to be. And I was out there for a week, and just being alone with God, trying to figure things out and listen and do that. And the thing that I really came away with was, because I was thinking about miracles, like what, are we supposed to be pursuing miracles now? Should we be doing that kind of a thing? And it's like, no. Ultimately, the greatest miracle, the thing that really affects people is seeing a changed life. Like, that's it. Like, it isn't parting seas or feeding multitudes. It's the changed life. It's our lives that are the greatest miracles. It's, again, to Titan's point, it's the changed heart, right? The more we reflect Christ, the more unlike the world we're going to be. That's what we have to do. And that's why I'm bringing this question to y'all. Again, I want this to be sort of the thing we engage in moving forward. How should that look? And I don't necessarily think it's going to be the same for everyone. In fact, I think there's going to be a lot of variables, right? But I think the core principles will be the same. And we just need to establish what those are, work with it. How do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? How do we make those lines known? how do we make these? How do we advocate for these things? How do we explain ourselves to the world around us? Like that's those kind, those are the questions I want to ask, because I think for too long it's easy to say, well, I give my money to XYZ organization and I'm done, and that's fair. Don't get me wrong. In fact, we were talking about Tobit on Sunday, right? Tobit's very, very big about alms. In fact, that's one of the reasons a lot of Protestants say it shouldn't be part of the Bible, because it talks about alms being, tied into salvation. Well, it's an Old Testament book, not New Testament. But second, why was Cornelius's house saved? What did Christ literally say was one of the reasons that he was sending Peter to Cornelius's house? Alms. So obviously, helping the poor, this is a big thing. Absolutely is. I'm not saying giving of money to worthy causes is not a good thing. I believe in that more than anything. But I don't think that that's the only thing we're supposed to be doing. And again, what does it look like? That's why we're here. That's why we want to have this conversation. Okay, Bet Mom, I'll start at the top. So, no, you can go back and watch it. Not doing that today. Although I will say, Bet Mom, if you scroll up, hold on, let me just do it so I make sure I get all the details right. Where'd we go? Okay, MH 1953, her granddaughter, Nora Elizabeth, was born at 3:48 this afternoon. Mother and baby are fine. And she is 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Yeah, I think I got all that right. Having trouble finding that last bit. Nora Elizabeth, yeah. So that's one of the big things. But yeah, these are some of the questions. Like, let's start with the whole focusing on thing that's good, that's beautiful. It was actually, so I was talking to, it was actually part of last night's conversation, right? We started talking about, Rob, Jessica, and myself. We were talking about, how the news is always negative, right? Yes, and she's very alert. I forgot, Bat Mom. She's very alert, so that's always good. But we were talking about how the negativity from the news, the negativity from shows, it does seem like a lot of these things have gotten darker. They've gotten evil, right? And I mean, I can't even tell you. Like, there's one of the things that shocked me was when Netflix announced. I mean, this is a couple of years ago now. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right? It's a Riverdale, or Archie comics. That's where it comes from, right? Some of y'all are old enough. You remember the Sabrina the Teenage Witch cartoon, Sabrina the Teenage Witch thing with it was a live action show they did. But this one was like they had freaking Baphomet showing up in the show. This one for Netflix. It was dark. It was they had pentagrams and there was blood, and like there's a art, like they had the Afterlife with Archie, where it was in the comics where it's straight up. It was all the Archie characters during a zombie uprising, and some of the characters were just getting gore. They were being torn apart. It was like, who wants to do this? Why is this there? And it's like we're seeing. It's not just negative. It's not just the negativity, but it's almost like. And one of the things we did talk about was whether or not demons and supernatural forces can move through. Can they move through these things? Right? Can they actually come through television? Can they come through the internet? Can they computers, cell phone? Are they able to reach out, or is it just the trauma? And maybe it's all of the above, right? Because look at how, just traumatic some of these shows are. And the thing is, when you watch these things, the brutality of some of these things, that's you know it's fake, right? Like Walking Dead. I stopped watching that after I think the third season because I'm like, it's just torture porn. Just absolutely. I couldn't do it anymore. And I'm like, this is just, it's terrible. It's like they're trying to like, look at how terrible everything is. I mean, that wasn't cool. And it's the thing that I've discovered just from what I can observe is like these creatures do feed off of trauma. They feed off of fear. They feed off of hurt and pain. Lisa Lou, believe me, I understand. You all know how much I get affected by allergies. So it's like, it feels very much like there's a plan to oppress us, to make us think on that which is evil. Like, while I'm drawing and doing other things, I love watching and listening to political stuff all day long. I'm a very political animal. But I have been watching or listening to, while I'm working and doing some, a bunch of other things, Stargate, Atlantis, and they've got an entire channel now dedicated to G.I. Joe on YouTube. Like Hasbro has an entire G.I. Joe channel, and they just live stream the original 80s G.I. Joe cartoon. I am not sitting here saying, right, that, yeah, actually, let me talk about that here in a second. Because actually, I've gotten a couple of questions from other people on that as well. So that's a great conversation to have. I'm not sitting here saying that G.I. Joe was well written at all, or that it's Shakespeare or anything like that. Good night, Lisa. Rather that it's just, it was don't get me wrong though, when you have a character like Desperos, saying revenge is a bitter fruit, who dreadnoughts, what, it's like, that's a great line. I love that stuff. It's optimistic. Ultimately it is, hey, good's gonna win, evil's going to lose. There's this optimism to it, there's humor to it, it's uplifting. It isn't, even with Stargate SG-1, as dark as that show got, and it can get pretty dark, there was always, we're going to get through it, we're going to be okay, we're going to triumph over bad things happen, but the world is good, we can help people, it's ultimately always uplifting. Today everything's bad, everything is depressing, everything is negative. So I'm thinking about that. Like, do we need to start just getting rid of all of this stuff and saying, hey, we need, but not just not engage with it, but to, again, actively push against, say, no, this stuff's wrong, and here's why you're wrong. Explain why it's wrong. So that's a thought. I want to throw that out there. I want us to ponder on it, and let's talk about it over the coming months. I want that idea out there. Like, do we need to start doing things where we're like, hey, we're not going to do things on Sunday anymore? I mean, obviously we'll do Bible stuff and Bible shows, and that's wonderful, but it's like, maybe we need to just shut Sunday down entirely and tell the world we're not doing anything on Sunday. Or maybe it's like we'll spend it with our families in our gardens, growing things. In fact, that's one of the things we talked about yesterday. It's like, I can't remember if it was on air or not, but that optimistic people and green thumbs seem to go hand in hand. And I'm a full believer in, plants feeling emotions and things like that, that they can be affected by those things. And it's like Jessica was talking about how her ex was a very negative person, that the plants kept dying, but once he was gone, the plants actually are abundant, they're happy, they're healthy. And I was thinking about it, it's like, I don't know anyone who's positive or anyone who's negative who has a green thumb. Like Rob was talking about, his garden, like his garden's great, he loves it, he's a very happy person, he's very positive about it. His neighbor, though, he hates it, and he's always yelling at Rob because Rob's plants look better. It's like, well, maybe it's because of his negativity. Maybe these are things we should consider. Maybe that's part of this whole thing is focusing on the positive and to create. Maybe we should be focusing on creating and healing and showing the world why that's better. Just a thought. How do we express that? I want to talk about that. But Bat Mom has a great question, and several of you have asked this question, so let's let me answer. Well, actually, so I'm going to answer Bat Mom's question about that, but let me. Nathan's guy, it's like, well, we're not supposed to work on Sunday. That are plants supposed to stop growing? No, they're supposed to create. They're supposed to grow. That's how it goes. But maybe we need. It's more the idea of the Sabbath that's important than necessarily the day per se. I think people need to see us taking times for our family. Again, how does that take place, or what does it look like? I'm not convinced that it's only about going out to eat after church. That's all I'm saying. A day that it's maybe we need to start treating Sundays as a day that is, again, as a day dedicated to God and doing those things and being with our families, and maybe that also involves being out in nature. And again, maybe it looks different. That's why I want to have the conversation. I want us to think about it. Let's talk about these ideas, because I think maybe this is the conversation we need to have. To Bat Mom's question, when it's specifically about Jessica Jones, right? She's the new team member over on Texas channel. Lovely person. One of the things I will do once Serial Paper starts is I'll have her on, because there are certain things that we absolutely disagree about. And I'd love to show that kind of conversation, and I'll be on her show. We can have those conversations as well. But I will say this: so on the first fundamental question is remote viewing. Is that demonic? Is it whatever? And so let me start drawing a few lines, right? There is a hold on, just a bad one. Yeah. Well, okay. So in Jewish tradition, it's Friday evening to Saturday evening. So because that was the Sabbath, because in Jewish tradition it goes from sundown to sundown. That's how their calendar works. So Saturday's the Sabbath in Jewish tradition. We do see now. The interesting thing is the reason we have a Saturday and a Sunday as a weekend in our culture is because we recognize the Sabbath, but then also Christians worship on Sunday, and we saw the early church do that. That's just why we adopted it. But the thing is, they didn't see it necessarily as a day of rest per se. But so okay, yeah. So back to Bat Mom's question. The difference between so let me start with psychic abilities are not inherently occult. Now, do a lot of occultists use psychic abilities? Yes, but it's the same thing as any tool, right? A tool in the hand of the Christian working in God's service, good thing. Any tool in the hand of an evil person deciding to do evil, particularly the occult, it is evil. Psychic abilities are natural abilities. Remote viewing, I would argue, is one of those skills. Now, I will state this: I don't recommend it. I will never suggest anyone try it. And the reason for it is we don't really have a lot of proper guidance on it. Psionic abilities they're sketchy at best as far as our level of control over them. It is, and so my thought on all this, again, true psychic abilities are natural, but I don't recommend their use, because it's like entering the ocean, right? There's this long okay, so Titan, actually, we'll talk about that here in a second. When there's a saying I heard a long time ago, and it's really sort of shaped my mind on a lot of things, which is when you enter the ocean, you enter the food chain. On land, which is where humans belong, we are at the top of the food chain. As soon as you hit that water, you ain't at the top of the food chain anymore. Psychic abilities are the same thing. We really don't have a good handle on them. And so the problem is, once you start engaging with a lot of those things, you're entering a food chain you're not at the top of. That's why I don't ever recommend it. I just don't. I think it's an, again, accessing natural abilities is one thing, and that is, but the problem is when you access them, they are oftentimes it puts you at a disadvantage, because now you're stepping into a realm that you don't have a lot of control over. Now, do a lot of occultists use psychic abilities? Yes, I think that's because it enhances their occult techniques. The problem is witchcraft is calling upon other powers, right? And to Batmom's question, the thing about remote viewing, and this goes back into the vagaries of time, right? How does time actually work? Well, again, as supernatural beings, I do think we have access to the supernatural realm. I mean, we do. We are not, this is not what we are, right? This is our physical body, but we are supernatural beings. We do transcend time and space to a point. This is why we have, like, there are dreams sent by God to tell us things. Absolutely. Visions. Absolutely. But this is why we can also know things that we're not supposed to know. It's not always that God is giving us things. It's because we are supernatural beings with access to supernatural abilities. Sometimes it's natural. Sometimes, and sometimes God uses those things. But there is a difference between listening to history. So when someone remote views, so let me be very specific on that. When someone remote views, they are not conjuring the dead, right? What they are doing is they are tuning into an event, right? It's like listening to an event on the radio, only you're listening to it on a higher plane. You can actually get more information. Again, while I think remote viewing, again, has absolutely been proven a real thing. I mean, the government spent decades perfecting it. It's still, its usability, its viability for information gathering is still very, very limited. One satellite, the reason the government uses them is to find, sometimes, and law enforcement uses them as well. It is, it's, okay, I'll explain that here in a second. These are usable things. The problem is it's not precise. It isn't exact the way a satellite would or whatever. So it's information gathering. But what you're doing is you're engaging in that time frame. So if it's an event in the past, essentially you're kind of there. You're picking up that information. To your point, what you have to understand is that she's not actually talking to the dead. That's like, that's not what's actually happening. A lot of things, particularly when you start talking about telepathy, when you start talking about psychic abilities, the problem is a lot of these things we have to use a language that makes sense. The problem is a lot of it doesn't. A lot of it's intuition. A lot of it is impression. There is a difference between what the Witch of Endor did, right? Which is actually summon the spirit of Samuel into the land of the living. That is necromancy. That is calling somebody up out of the dead. This is almost like time travel. You're going into that time. And yeah, exactly. So Gene, we're going to talk about that as well in a second. So the thing about remote viewing is it's more, again, it's like essentially it's a supernatural version of time travel. You're going there. The problem is the information that you're getting is you're not actually physically there. You're not actually engaging that. It's the echo of the event. One of the things I've talked about, I think I've talked about on this channel before as well. When people talk about ghosts, I don't believe in ghosts per se, meaning the spirit of a dead human haunting a location. I don't. I think humans, you go to heaven, you go to hell, period, in the story. You go to the land of the dead. That's it. Demons are disembodied spirit of the Nephilim. You know, there's other spirits out there, whole 9 yards. But you do also have these, you know, like if you go to we see them in like battlefields, or you know, there's the story of the haunting of, there's this woman, she always walks down a hallway and then goes down the stairs and then she disappears, right? Things like Gettysburg, where you see essentially essentially you see quote unquote ghosts reenacting Pickett's charge, right? That I would call it, those are imprints on time, and those are imprints on our reality, right? It's sort of like, again, pad of paper, right? We all did this. You can, you know, if you write a letter, you tear that page off, you can come back with a pencil and you can see the impression. When we see what are called what a lot of ghost hunters will call non-intelligent hauntings, where it's just the same thing repeated over and over and over again, what we're seeing is an impression on reality. Something we do because we've become so addicted to the idea of laboratory science. Something that we have just not, as a culture, embraced is the understanding that our universe is built on, again, it's the mind, right? It is will. It is, so the thing is, these are impressions on time and space. That information's there. Remember, we are going through time linearly. The supernatural world does not engage in time that way. So that's another thing we need to remember. Our causality is not the way the rest of the world works as far as the supernatural. Once you step out of that, you step out of that realm. In fact, for God, it's argued that all time is simultaneous anyway. So, I mean, we need to understand that the problem with all of these questions is that we think we understand how the world works, and we don't at all. So what she's doing is essentially, she's experiencing events from the past, right? She's not calling people forward. She's going back. But again, it's sketchy at best. Again, necromancy is you are talking. You are calling someone who is dead. You call them up to have the conversation. That's necromancy. That is evil. That's witchcraft. Also, I'm not a fan of again. I think tarot cards are out of that's out of the question. Also, like I said, I don't agree with Jessica on a bunch of this stuff that she does. I've got no problem with remote viewing because that's a skill. That's a psychic ability. That's not witchcraft. I don't like that she does the other things. And one thing she'll even say very publicly, she's like, she doesn't, there are things she won't look at. There are things she won't go because she sees the entities there, right? She sees, she's actually encountered these other beings and it freaks her out, as it should, right? Sometimes it's hard to go back and forth. So again, I go back to, I understand when you say that they're responding. You have to remember, she's not calling them forward. She's going back to there. And again, they're not actually having a conversation with her. She's trying to explain to you and to me and to everyone else how she's perceiving the events. That's the biggest thing to remember here. None of these things, it's those experiences that she's having when she's remote viewing is really beyond what we have language for. So it's a conveyance of thought is what she's trying to do. Last night I was like, last name. Yeah, like I said, tarot readings, palm. Again, there's a difference between. So again, main point is there are natural psychic abilities I'm not opposed to per se. I never advocate for them to be used because you are not on the top of that food chain. And I think it's very, very dangerous. someone wants to take that chance, that's on them. I would just recommend you find someone who can train you, mentor you. But again, I go back to not a lot written down on it officially from people I think you can trust. That's the other problem. Now, again, for me, it's a wisdom thing. Magic, on the other hand, I don't believe should be engaged with just at any point. So there you go. And so yeah, back to that point. Ghost stories have been around forever. Like, please understand, ghost stories are nothing new. That's not a modern concept. The idea of ghosts haunting people, that goes all the way back. But I think it's also because one of the reasons for it is demons are ghosts. Like, that's what they are. They are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim. They were living human beings that were a little extra. Now they're spirits. So, again, I may be wrong. Maybe there is some way for human spirits to return to the land and haunt people. Maybe. I don't think that's the case. Now, Samuel, I think that was actually Samuel. I agree with I'm with Nathan on this. I think it was Samuel. I don't think it was a demon at all. And we know it because of how she reacts, right? The Witch of Endor freaks out when she realizes who she called up. And I think, honestly, it's because she was expecting another spirit. She was expecting a demon. And instead, she actually gets Samuel. And she's like, oh, this is not good, right? She freaks out. Now, maybe she was expecting, maybe the problem with necromancy is you do call up the dead. Maybe you do. And that's supposed to be a forbidden thing. I don't know. What I know is I wouldn't trust anything someone who called up the dead was telling me. It's like, well, the dead person said this. I don't care. Why? I'm not supposed to talk to him. Now, let me throw one controversial thing. So again, as far as Jessica's concerned, I have no problem with her psychic abilities. I think it's, and again, I am never going to ask her to do something that I feel is dangerous. Like, I just won't. Like, she wants to go look at where she wants to look at, that's fine. It's not me. That's not my mind. I'm playing, I'm not playing Russian roulette with that. I'm like, I just want to know if this thing's a statue. I just, tell me where some pterosaurs are. That's fine. Psychic abilities, I'm perfectly okay with. I think if we hadn't sinned, I think you'd be surprised with the abilities that we would have, right? Again, the tarot card things that she does, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I think there's a lot of this stuff that she does that I'm not a fan of. And again, we'll have those conversations, right? I think it's dangerous. But as for, again, necromancy, which is, again, the difference is she is traveling through time. She's experiencing these things because in the supernatural world, time is a very different thing. That's why she can do it. Plus, souls come with flux capacitors. I know you didn't realize that, but psychics, we actually have a flux capacitor in our brain. That's what allows that to happen. Our physical bodies, just the problem is it doesn't work for us. It's a mental thing. To call up the dead, that's necromancy. That is inherently evil, and that should not be engaged with at all. I do think Samuel was called up. Absolutely. No question whatsoever. Right? Oh, Nathan, that's actually a question I'm going to have with her, because that was actually something we've talked about. So let me come back to that. I think Samuel was absolutely called up, period, end of story. The Bible says he was. Done. Now, I think I do think she wasn't expecting Samuel to show up. I think she was expecting a familiar demon. And yet Samuel shows up because I think God's like, all right, you want to play this game? Let's dance. I'll give you Samuel. And that's why she freaked out. I think she was getting ready to be like, okay, so my familiar demon's going to pop up. I'm going to do my mumbo jumbo, my little razzle dazzle, and I'll make my coins. That's what I do. But Samuel shows up, and that's why she freaks out. So, again, my opinion, I think I will a hill I will die on is that it is Samuel. Period. In the story, it's what the Bible says. That's what the text and plot says. Hard stop for me. You say you think it's not Samuel, that's between you and God. Because I'll say that's a heretical view. Because the Bible makes it very clear that is Samuel. Now, my opinion is she wasn't expecting it to be Samuel. If you want to argue that she was calling up the dead, fine. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I just think that her reaction tells me she wasn't expecting him. That's all I'm saying. To Nathan's question, yes, the flux capacitor requires 1.21 gigawatts because a gigawatt is different from a gigawatt. No, it's not. Okay, true story here. They didn't know how to pronounce gigawatt. When they went to make the film, nobody knew how to pronounce the word gigawatt, which is why he says gigawatt. That having been said, the flux capacitor that humans have in their brains to send, for our psychic abilities does not require 1.21 gigawatts. It's actually a much lower threshold. So, yeah, it's sort of like the whole, like light can travel at the speed of light, but we can't because we're physical creatures, physical beings. It takes infinite power to travel at the speed of light from like a material perspective, but light can. Same thing. The human soul, or the mind, our mental abilities, our psychic abilities, it doesn't require 1.21 gigawatts for that. Nathan, so I'm not going to argue with you. If you think she was actually calling up dead people in general and not just a familiar spirit, okay, cool. I'm not going to argue with you on it. Probably did. I'm just working from what I got, and again, her reaction makes me think maybe she was expecting someone else. That's all I'm saying. But yes, so to your question though, hold on. Oh, just saw Pat Mops. I was like, Necronomicon. Oh, I get it. Yeah, it's different. That's different. Yeah. Anyway. So to Nathan's question about, in The Last Jedi, which I'm so torn about because it's actually one of my favorite Star Wars films because I do think there were aspects of it that were really well done, and then I absolutely hate it and think it's completely abysmal because of the other aspects of the film, like basically everything that was not Rey and Sky and Darth Emo. Like everything else, I thought was absolute trash. I thought Holdo was absolute trash. I'm so torn on that movie. But anyway, so Nathan makes a great point. In the film, we see this idea that spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. Just saying. Luke Skywalker shows that Luke Skywalker sends this sort of force projection hologram of himself. This force projection clearly engages the material world around him. He hands things to Leia. He goes outside. He engages the whole 9 yards. So Nathan's asking, so his question is it possible that a lot of these ghosts, and I would say let's take it forward because Rob actually suggested something very, very similar a few episodes ago on my show, and Jessica was there, and I think this is something we want to really sort of pursue a little bit. How often are these intelligent hauntings, these intelligent ghosts, shadow people? And that's really where I was like, what if these shadow people are actually occultists? I think there's a lot more real dark occultists out there than we realize. What if a lot of these shadow people that are tormenting humans, feeding off their fears, off their torment, what if those are actually humans? They're not demons. They're not spirit, ghosts. These are humans in, astral projecting, or maybe they're even remote viewing. Maybe they're just using natural abilities, but they're using them in an evil way. Or maybe they're astral projecting, which is to actually send their soul somewhere, which is, again, that's also magic. But what if they're actually out there and they're the ones causing these things? I think that's a legitimate question, and that is one that we're going to that we're actually going to try and pursue. Honestly, I really do think that's what's going to happen. We're going to look at it. I think it's a real possibility. I don't have an answer for you yet. We're going to look into it. But it's definitely not out of the question, and it's a good one. It's something we need to really address, because it may be that this war is a lot more complicated than we realize. So let me get caught up on some of the comments here. And in later times, someone will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. So it's partial faith, no faith at all. So Titan, let me put that up there because I think it's a great comment. 1 Timothy 4:1, the Holy Spirit clearly says that in the later times, some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. So it's partial faith, no faith at all. I think the problem is, I think it says clearly that they will abandon the faith, right? It's not that they only have partial faith, is that they've left the faith. They had faith and they left it. Now, it's like Hebrews, right? We're in the coming months, we're going to get to that point. We're going to get to that verse that makes it that, I'm sorry, any fair objective reading of the text makes the conclusion that a Christian can decide to walk away from their faith. I think it makes it a real possibility, and there's other reasons that I think we should look at that. While I will say I'm not necessarily once saved, always saved, I am where I would differ from a lot of people who have this. It's like you're either once saved, always saved, or you are. It's like God's picking dating, like, I love you, he loves me not. He loves me not, kind of thing. Where it's like you gain and lose your salvation like your keys. I don't think it's that frivolous, right? And it's, I think when it says these were Christians who honestly abandoned the faith. It's not that they were again, the line in Timothy that you're talking about, again, the prophecy in Timothy. I think I think we're seeing it now. They leave the faith. I mean, look, they create a new Jesus. They are creating a Jesus of their own. They are creating a church of their own. They are editing scripture on their own. I think there's a lot of scriptures that can be argued and interpreted a lot of different ways, and with people coming at it honestly and humbly, we can have that conversation. That's not what's happening with a lot of these people, though. They are what's happening with a lot of these progressive Christians, and we're seeing it, is that they are actively deciding to change their faith. They don't believe in the God of the Bible. They don't believe in the Jesus of the Bible. They are creating their own God. They are leaving the faith. Are they being deceived? Yes, but I think it's because they want to be deceived. Again, we talked about this a long time ago. When God says that he was going to send a spirit that they may believe a lie, or a deception, they would believe a lie. It was that those who do not love the truth will believe the lie. These people are being deceived because they want to be deceived. They don't want to believe the truth. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think if you actually are holding on to your faith in God and in truth, he will see you through, right? He's going to pull you through that. But I think the problem is when you leave the faith, it's because you have made a conscious decision to reject the truth and pursue your lusts, your interests, what makes you feel good, not God. It's whatever you want to hear. The main difference between true religion, meaning being with God, and this progressive Christianity that's out there, it's who are you making happy? Because true Christianity will make you an enemy of the world. Progressive Christianity will make you a friend of the world. who's clapping, who's applauding you. That makes it very, very clear. So again, I mentioned remote viewing to Gene Hudson. Mentions that Bat Mom had talked about astral projection. So yeah, Nathan agreed. Again, I'm with you. I think that if you fall away, you're not coming back, and so I don't think it's a. Again, that's where I'm different. I'm like, look, I think the Bible says too much about you losing your salvation to ignore it. I also don't think you're gonna find and lose salvation like your keys. I think if you find salvation and you reject it, that's like, I don't think you get that back. I think you've made a decision and it gets ugly real fast, and I've seen it. So, just saying. But back to the idea. So again, so Jean, back to Batmom's point or her question about astral projection. We were talking about that at the time. I do think that astral projection is completely different from remote viewing. And the reason, for a number of reasons, but where I think remote viewing is a natural ability and skill. Again, I can never stress this hard, enough. It is engaging it's putting yourself in a place where you are opening yourself up to a lot of dangers, right? I think humans have natural psychic abilities. I think for some people it's stronger than others. I think if you're more inclined towards psychic abilities, you'll hear things, right? But as long as you don't engage, you're safe. I think once you engage your psychic abilities, you make yourself vulnerable, and I don't think that's a wise thing to do. Astral projection, on the other hand, is leaving your body. It is not tapping in and sort of playing with what's coming to you. It is literally going out into the universe. You leave your body, and it gets really weird from there. So I would say that in many ways it is the difference between where remote viewing is more about receiving information. Now, again, we use terms like they're going there. That's not. Again, it's an inaccurate term. It is, however, okay. Metaphor time. I just got it. It's the difference between you accessing the internet on your laptop or your desktop and pulling the information right from a website, and then going to the store like Walmart. Okay, we'll use Walmart. It's the big bad anyway. It's the difference between me using my laptop to order something from Walmart, go and see what Walmart has available and ordering it, then getting up and walking to Walmart. It's actually across the highway from me, so I could walk to Walmart. I'm not going to do it. But like going and driving to Walmart and going in the store, that's the difference. Remote viewing is like using the internet. And then astral projection is going there, and your soul leaves your body to do it, and that's magic, right? So, just saying, that would be the difference. So Gene Hudson said that. Hold on, let me go read these two comments. I think they're intertwined. And okay, so yeah, both questions are sort of tie-ins. Like, how do you know? There's a difference between being led astray and rejection. I think we're talking about rejection because now I will suggest this. I think if you ignore it long enough, hard enough, that's still rejection. I don't think everyone stumbles, everyone falls, everyone backslides, everyone makes mistakes. That's different. I am talking about actually actively rejecting God. And what I have seen from people who they have just actively rejected, they didn't just fall away, they weren't just led away, they reject God, they become very, very different people. They are hate-filled. They hate God. They will say the most evil things about God, about Jesus. They are spiteful people. Like they become very dark people. I think everyone stumbles, everyone falls. We are imperfect creatures. We are doing our best, and sometimes we're not where we should be, right? But that doesn't mean we've rejected God. It just means we're going through, sometimes we're not paying attention the way we should. Sometimes we're not living the way we should because we make mistakes. We allow the world to get to us because we're under constant assault. That's why I want to start having a conversation about how does living in the kingdom, bringing the kingdom to the world, why does that look like in the 21st century? Because I don't think we've seen it. I think that's the problem. Is I don't think we've seen it, which is why the church has been so weak. I want to have the conversation, right? But I think it's also, I think if we were to actually actively live in warfare against the world, we'd have fewer people fall away, right? Or we not fall away, but we'd have fewer people backsliding because you'd realize I have to be against this, right? It would help keep you focused, and it would be harder to fall and stumble. Stumbling, making mistakes, that is not rejection of God. To Nathan's point, the most militant, evil, and hateful atheists are former Christians. I think they have. I think when you see these people and they are just hateful, that's someone who rejected God. I don't think they're coming back. I think God's like, you had your chance. I'm out. Now, like I said, I don't believe that Christ was going to give up his life for us to not care if we stumbled and fell. If we made, and just be like, well, you made a mistake. I'm out on this person. You don't do that for someone you love. But yeah, people who reject God, when they've been Christians and they actively reject him, look, I'm no one's final judge and jury. I will work as hard as I can for everyone until their dying breath, until my dying breath. Because I don't know. I will never know. I would just rather fight for everyone, let God sort them out, because I know I'm not worthy to. But if you had understanding of the Holy Spirit, if he was in you and you reject God, all I know is I don't want to be in that hemisphere when you stand before him. Because even if he'll forgive you for that, I don't think it's going to be pretty. All I know is the Bible's very clear that we are to work our salvation out with fear and trembling. I don't think that's a metaphor. I think we should take that very real. Jesus is a patient, forgiving, and loving God. Absolutely. He sacrificed himself for us. He endured the pain of the cross for us. That is someone who's going to go the extra mile for you. Right? But when Jesus himself says that the kingdom of heaven is like a marriage, right? It's like this is like a wedding. It's like a great man, a rich man who's having a wedding for his son. And he goes out and he invites the friends and they reject him. And then he compels all the people from the byways, highways and byways to come in. And then we get to the wedding feast and there's a dude there who's not properly dressed and he throws him out. Just saying, that should give us all pause. So, just saying. Titan said, Jason, would you agree we have transitioned even in our lifetimes from the faith age, the age of science? We have to witness in the beginning with science of God for them to take notice. I think that's I would say yes and no. And in fact, the first episode of Sirupapers is going to be a similar topic. I don't think that we've left the age of faith. I think the thing is, it's always about faith. I think that what we call science is as much a faith as anything else. Science is a tool, like this pair of scissors. It's a tool. When people say the science, and they treat science as if it's a philosophy, and they're really treating it like a religion, because true science, the tool, would look at a lot of these questions and say, we can't have an opinion on it because we can't poke at it with a stick. That's it in the conversation. We've not left the age of faith. In fact, I would argue we are in the age of uber faith, because we have an entire population that believes men can become women because somebody thinks it. You tell me that's not an act of faith? When someone says, oh, well, I think I'm a non-binary transgender canary, and so you should call me Polly every second Thursday, and my pronouns are bird self. You tell me that's not faith? That's not just insanity. That's faith. And then to turn around and say, and everyone should call me Polly self when you use my pronouns. Okay, that's religion. That's religion. When someone says, yep, the universe randomly blew up 14.5 billion years ago, now we got monkeys and cars and stuff because of light condensed into matter, that's faith. It is not science versus religion. It's religion versus religion. So, on that note, lovely people, I will bid you adieu. I will not be here. Well, thank you, Gene. It is a cult. The thing is, cults are religions. It's it's all matters of faith. I will not be here on Sunday. I will be on. I did talk to Daniela. It does look like she will be able to have a show on Sunday. Unfortunately, she had a change in her work schedule, and that's hit her hard because she's overseas, right? Like when we're doing her show on Sundays, it's like 12 at night, 1 in the morning for her. It's, so she unfortunately, her schedule was precluding her for us from having a show, but her schedule's changed. So theoretically we will have a show on Sunday night. I should be in attendance. I just won't be home in time for us to do the show, in the morning. So yeah, should be there. So you will see me on Sunday, just it'll be Sunday night. But then everything goes back to normal. So on that note, lovely people, I will see you adieu. I bid you adieu, and I will see you when I see you. Let's keep each other in prayer, and let's ask ourselves how does focusing on that which is beneficial. Oh yes, to Gene's question about Bob. Yes, Dr. Bob's doing very well. And Alan is doing his best, is honestly doing the best he can. God is watching out for him. He's in Nairobi, Kenya. I mean, they're getting hit really hard with a lot of the stuff that's going on. COVID, Ukraine, a lot of their grain comes from Ukraine. All right, I don't want to turn that into a My Fair Lady joke, but it's hitting them hard. Like, you think inflation is hitting us hard? Imagine living in Nairobi, Kenya. Like, it is, we still need to keep them in prayer all the time. Again, they're trying to build things so that people can come out to them and actually see them. But it's, money, it's hard for them right now. It's hard for a lot of people right now. Obviously, it's hard for people here in America with inflation and the shortages, but please understand that they were in way worse situation. They were in a way worse situation before all this happened. So it's actually gotten much worse for them. But they're doing pretty okay for the time being because of the money that y'all are sending. But let's definitely keep them in prayer. Like I said, Dr. Bob's doing very, very well. Let's keep him in prayer. Let's keep each other in prayer. And let's focus on positive things. Let's actually, again, not in a I'm going to ignore the evil of the world thing, but let's keep our eye on God. Let's keep our eye and focus on that which is good and beautiful. On that note, I will bid you beautiful people adieu.